I need you to listen to me very carefully, sweetheart, because what I'm about to tell you, well, most people never believed a single word of it. They nodded politely, smiled, whispered behind my back, said things like, "Poor old woman, she's slipping." But I wasn't slipping. I wasn't confused. I wasn't imagining anything. I knew exactly what I saw, and if you stay with me, if you don't look away, you're going to understand why I could never sleep peacefully again. It started on a Wednesday morning. The kind of morning where the world feels strangely quiet, like something is waiting just beyond the edge of your hearing. I was sitting in my kitchen, stirring my tea, watching the steam curl like ghostly fingers toward the ceiling. My house was old, older than I like to admit, and it creaked in all the places a house shouldn't creak. The floorboards sighed. The pipes hummed. But that morning, something was different. The air felt heavy, like a warning wrapped inside warm sunlight. I remember glancing at the clock. 7:13 a.m. I remember because the second hand froze for a moment, just stopped before jerking forward again. And immediately after that I heard it. A whisper. A soft, trembling whisper floating through my hallway, as if someone stood just behind the wall and breathed out my name in a voice I hadn't heard in years. Margaret. My heart nearly jumped through my ribs. I stood up, gripping the table to steady myself. You'd think after 78 years on this earth, I'd be used to strange happenings, but no, that whisper felt impossibly real, warm, almost human. I walked toward the hallway, but the moment I reached it, the whisper stopped, and the temperature dropped so fast my breath puffed out like winter air. Now let me ask you something, darling. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt someone was already there, even when it looked completely empty? Just nod or shake your head. You and I were talking together here. I waited for something, anything, to move or shift or breathe, but the hallway remained still. Too still. I turned in a circle, scanning every dark corner, and that's when I noticed something odd. The family photo on the wall, my children, my late husband, and me, was tilted at an angle it had never been before. Not fallen, not dropped, but touched. Like someone had adjusted it gently with the tip of their finger. I reached out to straighten it, but the moment my fingers brushed the frame, the whisper came again. Louder this time. Closer. Margaret, don't. I froze. My blood felt like ice water. My knees went weak and I even said out loud, "Who's there?" But no answer came, only a faint tapping sound somewhere inside the walls. 3 taps. Slow. Deliberate. Waiting. My children never believed me. Not then, not later. They were too busy with their lives to imagine something strange happening in the little brick house where they grew up. When I called my daughter that morning and told her I heard a voice in the house, she tried to soften her tone, said, "Mom, maybe you just woke up too fast." But I hadn't. My senses were sharper than ever, almost painfully sharp. I could feel something watching me, studying me, waiting for me to notice it fully. I tried to distract myself by washing the dishes, but I kept looking over my shoulder. The kitchen window reflected my own face. Pale, shaken, but behind me I swore I saw a shadow shift. Not a normal shadow, no, this one moved like it was alive, as if it turned its head toward me. I spun around so fast I nearly slipped, but again, nothing. Empty air and silence. Hours passed. The day stretched on. I tried to convince myself nothing was wrong, that age was playing tricks on me. But deep down I knew. I knew something had entered my life that morning. Something that didn't belong in the world of the living. By late afternoon, I was too tired to keep pretending everything was fine. I sat in my living room, clutching a knitted blanket, waiting for the sun to set so I could call it a day and hide under the sheets like a scared little girl. But before the sun could disappear, I heard footsteps in the attic. Slow. Heavy. One step. Then another. My heart pounded against my ribs. I don't have anyone living with me. I don't have pets. And I certainly don't have visitors walking around above my head. I stared at the ceiling, my throat dry. The footsteps moved from one side of the attic to the other, deliberate, like whoever or whatever was up there didn't care if I heard them. I wanted to run outside, scream for help, anything. But something held me in place. A feeling. A certainty. That if I left the house, whatever was inside would follow me. I whispered, "Please just leave me alone." But that was the biggest mistake I made. Because the moment I said that, everything stopped. The footsteps. The creaking. The whispering. Silence swallowed the house whole. And then the attic door creaked open on its own. A long, slow, aching creak. I stared at the hallway where the attic stairs unfold. My breath shook so hard I pressed a hand against my chest. I knew I should have grabbed my phone, called someone, done anything except sit there frozen, but I didn't move. I couldn't move. Because standing at the top of the attic stairs in the dimness was a figure. Not fully visible, not fully human-looking, but unmistakably watching me. You want to know the worst part? The part that made everyone think I was losing my mind? I recognized the silhouette. It looked exactly like my husband. But my husband had been gone for 12 years. If you're still with me, if you want to know what that thing was and why it came back looking like the man I once loved, then don't go anywhere. Stay right here. I need you with me. I need someone to hear the truth before it's too late. I wish I could tell you I ran toward the door like a sensible person. I wish I could tell you I grabbed a phone, called for help, shouted for the neighbors, anything. But when you see something that looks like the person you buried with your own trembling hands, you don't think logically. You don't think at all. Your heart takes over and your bones forget how to move. I sat there in my living room, staring at that shadowed figure at the top of the attic stairs. My breath felt tight in my chest, almost painful. For a moment, just one tiny dangerous moment, I thought, what if it really is him? What if I'm wrong? What if he came back because he still needs me? You ever have a memory hit you so hard it feels like someone pressed a cold hand right against your spine? Because that's what happened to me. I remembered the way my husband used to stand at the top of those stairs with that warm, crooked smile of his. I remembered him calling my name softly when he wanted to show me something he crafted in the attic. Little wooden toys for the children, little surprises for me. But the figure watching me now didn't move like him, didn't breathe like him. It didn't carry the warmth of a living body. No, this thing was heavier somehow. Darker. Wrong. My voice shook as I whispered, "Henry, is that you?" The figure didn't answer. It shifted only slightly, like it tilted its head. But instead of stepping down the stairs, it stayed there frozen. Almost as if it wanted me to come closer. And that, darling, is when I realized something was terribly off. My Henry would have never just stared at me without speaking. He would have said, "Maggie, sweetheart, don't strain your eyes. Come here, love." Or something soft like that. Not this silence. Not this cold watching. Still, curiosity is a dangerous thing. It can pull a person right toward their own destruction. And it nearly pulled me into mine. I stood up on shaky legs, gripping the armrest of my chair for balance. My living room floor felt like it was tilting beneath me, and I could hear my own heartbeat drumming in my ears. With every step toward the hallway, the figure at the top of the attic stairs became clearer, not physically but energetically. The air tightened, thickened. It felt like walking into water that was slowly turning to ice. I took another step. Another. The house groaned around me, as if warning me to turn back. When I reached the bottom of the attic stairs, I finally understood something crucial, and something terrifying. The figure wasn't standing still. It was swaying. Not like a human trying to balance. Like a puppet held by strings you cannot see. I froze so fast my ankle nearly twisted. My fingernails dug into the banister. That swaying motion, that subtle unnatural shift of weight, it made something ancient inside me scream to run. "Henry!" My voice cracked. "This isn't funny, please." The figure stopped swaying. Then very slowly it lifted one arm, bent, stiff, jerky, and pointed directly at me. I stumbled back so quickly I hit the wall behind me. I don't know how long I stood there trembling, but eventually the figure withdrew, slipping backward into the attic darkness in a way that did not belong to any living body. The attic door creaked, then slammed shut so violently that dust rained from the ceiling like dead snow. Everything went quiet. Everything. The air loosened. The heaviness faded. The house seemed to exhale. I clutched my chest, sliding down the wall until I sat on the floor, shaking like a leaf caught in a storm. I didn't move for what felt like hours. And that's when I heard the softest, almost polite knocking at my front door. Not pounding. Not urgent. Just a gentle tap tap tap. As if someone didn't want to scare me, but wanted me to open it anyway. I crawled to my feet, still trying to catch my breath. I forced myself down the hallway and reached for the doorknob, praying it was just a neighbor, a package delivery, anything normal. But when I opened the door, no one was there. The porch was empty. The street was empty. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. But something was there. On the doormat. A small wooden object. My heart dropped because I knew exactly what it was before I picked it up. A wooden bird. Hand-carved. Just like the ones Henry used to make in the attic. But this one was old. Faded. Water-damaged. And carved with a roughness Henry never had in his hands. He was gentle with his craft. This one looked like it had been carved with shaking hands or claws. I whispered, "Who put this here?" No answer. Just the wind. "Now, sweetheart, let me ask you something. And don't be afraid to answer me, we're just talking. Have you ever found something outside your home that you knew, deep in your soul, should not have been there? Something that felt like a message? Think about it for just a moment. Because that little wooden bird, it was only the beginning. I brought it inside against my better judgment and set it on the kitchen counter. The moment it touched the surface, I heard a soft click from inside it. I stepped back staring. Another click. Like something shifting within the wood itself. I grabbed a towel and picked it up again just in case and held it close to my ear. Tick, tick, tick. Not like a bomb. No, like a heartbeat. The wooden bird was beating. I dropped it onto the counter so fast it skittered across the surface and hit the cabinet with a dull thud. And when it landed, the ticking stopped. Silence filled the kitchen. I knew then. I was being watched. Followed. Tested. Someone or something wanted my attention and it wanted me alone. My phone rang suddenly, nearly giving me a heart attack. I lunged for it, and when I saw the caller ID, I nearly burst into tears. "My son." I answered with a shaking voice. "Tom, honey. Something's happening at the house." But Tom didn't sound concerned. He sounded annoyed. "Mom, I'm at work. Can I call you later?" No, listen to me. Someone was in the attic. Someone left something at my door." "Mom," he sighed. "We talked about this. You're alone too much. You're letting the house noises get to you again." Again. That word stung. I tried explaining. I really did. But he didn't want to hear it. "Take your meds, relax, watch some TV. I'll call tonight." Click. He hung up. I stared at my phone, feeling defeated and furious all at once. No one believed me. Not even my own children. And I knew, deep in my bones, that something inside this house was only getting stronger. You think that wooden bird was the last sign? No, it was just the first one brave enough to show itself. You know, people think fear shows up like a scream or a jump or a moment of panic. But real fear, the kind that seeps into your bones, it comes quietly. It settles into the corners of your home, sits in the empty chairs, breathes in the silence when you're trying not to notice. That's the kind of fear I woke up with the next morning. I could feel it before my eyes even opened, like someone was standing beside my bed waiting for me to move. I kept perfectly still, listening. The room felt too cold. Not winter cold, wrong cold. A cold that sinks under your skin even when you're wrapped in blankets. I slowly turned my head toward the window, and that's when I saw it. The wooden bird from the night before was sitting on my nightstand. I hadn't brought it to my bedroom. I swear to you I left it in the kitchen. I even remember wiping the counter after it fell. But there it was, perched right next to my glasses, as if someone wanted me to see it the moment I woke up. I reached out with trembling fingers, not to touch it, but to push it away from me. It was warm. Not room temperature warm, body warm. Like it had been held. Or carried. I snatched my hand away so fast I nearly flung it across the room. My breath came out uneven, and my heart pounded like I'd run up 3 flights of stairs. "Stop," I whispered to the empty room. "Just stop it. Leave me alone." But the moment I said that, a soft tapping started on the bedroom wall. Tap, 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 right behind my headboard. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was slow, patient, like someone was knocking from the other side of the wall, waiting for me to answer. I covered my ears, but the tapping didn't stop. It followed me. As I moved out of bed, as I walked toward the door, as I stepped into the hallway, the tapping followed along the walls behind me, moving with me like whatever was making the sound was crawling through the inside of the walls. You ever been so scared your body moves on its own, without your mind thinking first? That's what happened to me. I grabbed my coat, my purse, my keys, and I walked right out of the house barefoot, not even realizing it until I was halfway down the sidewalk. The air outside felt like freedom, like I'd escaped something hungry. The street was quiet, the sun gentle, the world normal again. For the first time in 2 days I felt like I could breathe. I kept walking until I reached my neighbor Linda's house. Sweet woman, always offering me cookies that taste like cardboard but made with love. I knocked on her door with shaking hands. She answered wearing her usual fluffy robe, her hair in curlers. Margaret? You're out early. I didn't know how to explain what I'd seen, what I'd heard. So I just said, something's wrong at my house. She squinted at me, concern slowly replacing sleepiness. What kind of wrong? I heard things, I said softly. Saw things. Someone left something in my home. Her expression tightened. Not in disbelief but in understanding. Come inside, she said. We sat at her kitchen table, sunlight spilling over the patterned tablecloth. She made me tea. Chamomile. The kind Henry used to love before bed. The smell alone made my throat tighten. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. Every detail. The whispers. The wooden bird. The figure in the attic. The tapping. I expected her to stop me halfway, to give me that sympathetic smile people give the elderly when they think we're confused. But she didn't. She listened. Really listened. When I finished, she didn't look shocked. She looked worried. Margaret, she said carefully, your house is old. Very old. Older than mine. I've heard things too. That made my skin crawl. What kind of things? She hesitated. Footsteps. Voices. Sometimes. A shadow in my yard when there's no one outside. I swallowed hard. Did you ever see anyone? No, she whispered. But I always felt someone was watching the houses on this street. Especially yours. My stomach dropped. Why mine? Linda folded her hands. Because of what happened years ago. I leaned forward. What happened? She lowered her voice. Before you and Henry moved in, that house belonged to a widow named Eleanor. People said she wasn't right in the head. She talked to herself. Heard things in the walls. She claimed someone followed her from room to room. She begged the police to check the attic because she swore a man was living in it, watching her sleep at night. My heart cracked open with dread. Was anyone there? No, Linda said. At least not that they found. Then she added quietly, Eleanor died in that house. No one ever figured out how. I felt sick. The room seemed to tilt. Memories of the figure in my attic flashed across my mind. The wooden bird. The whisper calling my name. I whispered, are you saying what I saw was the same thing she saw? I'm saying your house has a history, she said gently. And spirits, well, sometimes they don't stay put. I looked away, tears burning my eyes. Linda, I'm scared. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then you're staying here tonight. I wanted to accept. God, I wanted to. But something deep inside me knew I couldn't leave my house unattended. Whatever was inside, it wanted me. Didn't want witnesses. I can't, I whispered. If I run, it will follow me. She frowned. You don't know that. Yes, I did. I felt it. In my bones. After thanking her, I headed back home. My feet felt heavy with dread. When I reached my house, everything looked normal. Calm. But the moment I stepped inside, the air shifted again. Tight, cold, electric, like the house itself had held its breath waiting for me. I locked the door behind me. I don't know why. Locks don't stop spirits. But I needed to feel like I had control over something. I walked into the kitchen and stopped dead. The wooden bird was gone. My breath caught. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it. But now the counter was empty. Clean. Then I heard it. Not tapping. Not whispering. Singing. A low, warbling hum drifting from the attic. A tune Henry used to sing when he carved toys. But the voice singing it wasn't his. It was deeper. Slower. Almost mocking. I stared up at the ceiling, horror curling through my veins. Whatever was in my house had learned his voice. And it wanted me to hear it. I wish I could tell you I ran out of that house the second I heard that awful humming. I wish I could say I had the strength. But fear doesn't always make you flee. Sometimes it roots your feet into the floor like you've grown into the boards. That's what happened to me. I stood there in my kitchen, staring up at the ceiling while that terrible imitation of my husband's tune drifted down through the attic door. I whispered, please stop. But the humming only grew louder, fuller, richer, like whoever or whatever was up there wanted me to hear every note. I didn't want to go upstairs. Every part of me screamed not to. But another part, a dangerous part, whispered, what if it really is him? What if he's trapped somehow? What if you're abandoning him? Grief is a cruel liar. It speaks in the voices you miss the most. I took one careful step toward the hallway, then another. My hands shook so badly I had to grip the wall to steady myself. The closer I got to the attic stairs, the heavier the air became. It was like walking into a room filled with invisible fog, thick, cold, suffocating. When I reached the first step, the humming suddenly stopped. Just cut off. Silence poured down from the attic like something was listening to me. Waiting. Watching. I swallowed hard. My voice cracked when I said, if someone is up there, please answer me. Nothing. But then, something else happened. A soft thud. Then another. Then a slow dragging sound, like something heavy was being pulled across the attic floor. My chest tightened so hard it felt like my ribs were shrinking. The dragging grew louder, closer, until it stopped right above me. I stared at the ceiling. I could almost imagine fingers, long pale fingers, curling around the boards from the other side. That was enough. I backed away from the stairs. Fast. Almost tripping. I didn't care what was up there anymore. I didn't care if it wore Henry's shadow like a costume. I just needed to get away from that attic before something decided to come down. I ran to the living room and grabbed the phone, dialing my daughter this time. Mom? Everything okay? No, I gasped. Something is in the attic. I heard singing. Something is dragging. Mom, she interrupted gently like she was soothing a child. Mom, you're stressed. You're hearing the wind, or old wood shifting. It sang to me. I snapped. It used your father's voice. The silence on the phone was sharp, cold. Then she said, Mom, Dad has been gone 12 years. I know that, I whispered. But I heard it. Someone is up there. I need help. She sighed. I'll come by tonight, okay? After work. Just try to relax until then. Tonight might be too late, I whispered. But she was already talking over me. Mom, I'll come later. Just rest. And then she hung up. I put the phone down slowly, staring at it like it betrayed me. No one believed me. Not one soul. My hands trembled uncontrollably. I wrapped my arms around myself and sat on the couch, rocking ever so slightly. The house felt alive around me. Breathing, shifting, whispering through the walls. I couldn't sit there all day, trapped in fear, waiting for something to crawl down from the attic. So I did something foolish. I left the house and walked to the old library down the street. Anything to avoid going back inside. The librarian, Mr. Campbell, looked up from his desk as I entered. He smiled warmly. Morning, Margaret. Looking for something in particular? I hesitated, then said quietly, history. Of our street. Of the older homes. His eyebrows lifted. That's specific. Do you have anything? I asked. He nodded and led me to a dusty corner of the library where old town records were stored in cracked binders and fading folders. I sat down at a small wooden table and began flipping through them. And there it was. My house. Records dating back almost a century. One page caught my eye immediately. An incident report handwritten in shaky cursive. My stomach knotted as I read it. Resident claims sounds coming from attic. Reports of humming at night. Complains of seeing a man-shaped shadow at top of stairs. Resident's mental state deteriorating. No evidence found in attic upon inspection. At the bottom was the name. Eleanor. The previous owner. My finger traced the words man-shaped shadow and humming. It felt like someone had reached through time and touched my shoulder. I turned the page. More reports. More complaints. More notes from neighbors claiming they heard screaming or knocking late at night. Every single one of them pointed back to the attic. But one file struck me cold. It wasn't written by Eleanor. It was written by a neighbor at the time. She keeps saying he comes down from the attic at night. She says he sits at the foot of her bed. Claims he knows her name. My breath caught. My name had been whispered too. I slammed the binder shut and pressed my shaking hands to my face. Something was terribly wrong with that attic. Something that didn't care who lived in the house. Something that learned voices. Learned names. Learned how to mimic the dead. I didn't want to go home. I wanted to run far, far away. But where could I go? My daughter wouldn't believe me. My son would only think I'd finally lost my mind. And Linda, sweet Linda, she already seemed scared enough herself. Eventually I made my way back home, walking slowly, dreading what waited for me inside. The moment I opened the door, I felt it. The temperature had dropped again. My breath fogged in front of me. And in the middle of my living room floor was the wooden bird. Except now it wasn't intact. It was cracked down the center, like something had split it open. I knelt slowly and touched it with one finger. The wood pulsed once like a heartbeat, and then fell still. I dropped it and backed away, my heart hammering. Something inside that house was growing stronger, bolder, more desperate to be seen. And when I looked up toward the attic door, hanging slightly open at the end of the hallway, I saw fingers. Long shadowy fingers slowly curling around the edge. Someone was coming down. I don't think I breathed for a full 10 seconds. I just stared down that hallway, frozen in place, my eyes locked on those fingers curling around the attic door. They weren't normal. They were too long, almost jointless, like they bent in places human bones couldn't. And the color? God help me, they weren't the color of skin. They were grayish like ashes soaked in water. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to stay quiet. But my heartbeat was so loud in my ears that I was afraid whatever was up there could hear it. The fingers tightened on the door frame, gripping it with slow, deliberate strength. And then ever so slightly, the door creaked open wider. I whispered, "No, please no," but my voice was barely air. The hand retreated suddenly, so fast it blurred, and the attic door slammed shut with a crack that shook the house. I flinched and covered my ears as dust rained down from the ceiling. Then silence. Not the peaceful kind. The suffocating, heavy kind. The kind that feels alive. I wanted to collapse right there on the floor, but something inside me, maybe instinct, maybe stubbornness, maybe pure terror, told me not to turn my back to that hallway. So I backed up slowly until I reached the living room, keeping my eyes on the attic door the entire time. My legs felt weak, rubbery. I couldn't trust them, but they moved anyway. When I reached the couch, I grabbed the phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. A calm voice answered. 911, what's your emergency? I tried not to sound insane. Someone's in my attic. Ma'am, do you see anyone? No, I whispered. But I just saw. I stopped. What was I going to say? I saw a shadow hand made of ash reaching down from the attic to greet me. The operator repeated. Ma'am, has the person threatened you? Yes, I said, my voice cracking. Yes, I think so. Stay on the line, she instructed. Officers are on the way. I held onto that phone like it was life support. Every second felt like an hour. I stared at the attic door, waiting for something else to slip out from behind it. But the house remained still. After what felt like forever, I heard a knock on the door. Not a creepy knocking. A normal human knocking. I nearly cried from relief. I hurried to the door, opened it, and 2 officers stood there. Hands on their belts, professional and alert. Mrs. Thompson? One asked. We got a call about an intruder. Yes, I said breathlessly. In the attic. All right, the younger one said. We'll check it out. I stepped aside, praying they would see something real and physical, because if they didn't, I knew what would happen. They'd call my children. My children would call the doctor. And everyone would decide I was losing my mind. The officers moved through the house with flashlights drawn. One went to the back door. One went down the hall. I stood in the living room, clutching my arms tightly. Attic door is here, the older officer asked. Yes, I whispered. Be careful. Please. He nodded, reached up, pulled the string and unfolded the attic ladder. It creaked down. A cold draft spilled into the hallway. The officer shined his flashlight up into the darkness and climbed. I held my breath. Every second was agony. Finally he called down. Clear. No one up here, ma'am. My stomach dropped. There has to be, I whispered. Something was there. He came back down the ladder, shrugged slightly and said, Old houses make strange noises. Shadows play tricks. Sometimes animals get in. It wasn't an animal, I said firmly. It touched the door. It dragged something across the floor. It sang. The younger officer exchanged a quick look with the older. Caught it. I hated that I caught it. That quiet, polite pity people give the elderly when they're trying not to look concerned for the wrong reasons. "Everything's safe here," he said gently. "But call us again if you hear anything." And they left. Just like that. I closed the door slowly and leaned my head against it. Tears rolled down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. I whispered, "Why won't anyone believe me?" As if in answer, the hallway light flickered once, twice, then went out. I stood in total darkness, my breath trembling in my chest. I reached for the switch, flicked it up and down, but nothing happened. That was when I heard it again. A hum. Soft. Low. Coming from the hallway. No, not the hallway. Behind me. I turned very slowly. And there, through the reflection in the hallway mirror, I saw something standing behind me in the dark. Not clearly. The mirror was old, slightly warped. But I saw the shape. A tall shadow with broad shoulders, standing impossibly still. Not breathing. Not moving. Just watching me. I couldn't turn around. I couldn't scream. My whole body locked up. The figure in the reflection leaned slightly to the side, its head lowering, as if it were studying me, trying to memorize me, trying to understand me. Then the humming stopped. The shadow straightened, and it raised one long crooked finger to its lips. Silence. Then it faded slowly, until the reflection showed only me. I collapsed to my knees. My whole body shook uncontrollably. I clutched the edge of the couch, sobbing. I knew then, without any doubt, that whatever lived in my attic wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a person. It wasn't the spirit of Eleanor or Henry or anyone who'd lived before. It was something older. Something that learned. Something that wanted me quiet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with every lamp on, listening for the slightest noise. And I got my wish. No sounds. No humming. No knocking. No footsteps. The house stayed silent. Almost too silent. Like it was waiting for me to let my guard down. I wish I could tell you that the next morning brought peace, or some kind of clarity, but darling, it brought the exact opposite. I woke up feeling like someone had been sitting at the foot of my bed all night, watching me breathe. You ever get that heavy, prickling feeling between your shoulder blades like eyes are boring into you? That's how I felt. And the worst part? I wasn't sure if it was something real, or something I had finally snapped inside my mind. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face, and I whispered to myself, "You're okay, you're okay." But my voice cracked because deep down I knew I wasn't okay. Not at all. Not even slightly. And for a moment I wondered, if you were in my shoes, would you have stayed in that house? Or would you have run as fast as you could? Be honest with me, sweetheart. What would you have done? Because me? I wasn't ready to run. Not yet. Something inside me. Maybe stubbornness, maybe madness, maybe that old motherly instinct that refuses to leave, pushed me to keep searching for answers. If something was haunting me, if someone was trying to get my attention, I needed to know why. I walked downstairs, holding the railing tight because my legs were trembling. Every step felt like it echoed too loudly, like the house was listening, waiting. The air smelled strange, like cold metal and old wood. And right when I reached the living room, I stopped dead in my tracks. All the photo frames on the wall, every single one, had been turned upside down. You tell me, sweetheart, frames don't just flip themselves. And they weren't crooked. They were perfectly inverted, like someone had moved through the house with careful, deliberate hands. I pressed my hand over my heart because it was beating so fast I thought it might burst. I whispered, "Who are you? And what do you want from me?" My voice trembled so much it barely sounded like me. Then I felt it. The cold air rushing past my cheek, like someone had just walked right by. I jerked my head, but nothing was there. Nothing I could see. I stood in that room surrounded by all my memories, my late husband's smile frozen behind the glass, my children as babies, holidays, birthdays. And suddenly it hit me like a punch to the chest. Every picture of me was upside down, but all the others untouched. As if whatever lived in that house wasn't angry at my family. It was angry at me. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I clenched my jaw and said out loud, "If you're trying to scare me, you're doing a damn good job." And maybe it was foolish, maybe reckless, but I talked to it the way I talked to my kids when they used to hide under the table, firm, tired, and absolutely done with the nonsense. But then I heard it. A soft, slow tapping. Woo 3. Coming from the basement door. My breath caught. My blood ran cold. Because, sweetheart, the basement door was open. Not wide, just a few inches. Just enough to let the darkness seep out like smoke. I stepped closer, even though every part of me screamed to run. I don't know why I always walk toward danger instead of away. Maybe it's age, maybe it's life, maybe it's because when you're old, fear doesn't hold the same power anymore. You've seen too much already. I whispered. Is someone down there? The tapping stopped. Then a whisper floated up the stairs. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just broken. Help. I froze. My skin erupted in goosebumps. Because the voice sounded like a child. A little girl. Shaking. Crying. And you tell me, darling, what kind of monster would ignore a child's cry for help, even if it came from the darkest place in the house? I swallowed hard and inched closer to the door. My fingertips brushed the wood, and it felt strangely warm, like the heat of a small hand pressing back against mine. Then suddenly, slam. The door shut right in my face. I stumbled back, gasping. Not because of the slam, but because something whispered through the crack. They'll see you soon. Who? Who would see me? What did that mean? My knees weakened, and for the first time I grabbed my phone, thinking I should call someone, anyone. My daughter, my son, the police, the pastor, hell, even the mailman. But would they believe me? After everything? After the rumors, after the doctors, after the therapist who politely suggested I should accept aging gracefully? I stared at my phone, and instead of calling someone, I turned on the camera. I switched it to video. Because if the world needed proof, then proof I would get. I took a breath, walked to the middle of the living room and said softly, if something is here, show yourself. The room went still. Silent. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. 3 times. My heart hammered as I held the phone up, recording every second. The air grew colder, so cold my breath puffed out in white clouds. I whispered, please, I'm not trying to hurt you. And then my phone screen started shaking, like someone else was holding it. I screamed and dropped it. The phone hit the floor, skidding across the wood. And right then, right there, something appeared in the reflection of the blank TV screen. A girl. Standing behind me. Face pale. Eyes wide. Mouth trembling like she was trying to speak but couldn't. I spun around, nothing there. But when I looked back at the TV, she was still in the reflection. Closer this time. Reaching toward me. My legs finally gave out. I fell to my knees, shaking so violently my teeth chattered. And softly, barely audible, I whispered, sweetheart, if you need help, just tell me how. The reflection girl leaned in until her forehead touched mine in the glass. And she mouthed a single word. Run. Then she vanished. Just gone. The cold lifted. The silence broke. My breath returned. And that was the first moment, darling, the very first, when I realized this thing, this presence, this little girl wasn't the monster. Something else was. Something bigger. Something darker. And it wasn't just hiding anymore. It was hunting. Do you know the feeling when the whole world suddenly becomes too quiet? Not peaceful, not calm, just wrong. That's exactly how my house felt after that little girl vanished from the reflection. A silence so heavy it felt like it was pressing its hands over my ears. And for the first time since everything began, I didn't feel alone. I felt watched. I sat there on the living room floor for a long time, my knees tucked close, my hands shaking. I kept thinking about the way she touched her forehead to mine through the glass. How soft and cold she looked. And darling, I don't care how old I am. I don't care what the world says. No hallucination feels that real. No fading memory can reach out for you like that. But one thing haunted me more than anything. Why did she tell me to run? Run from what? I finally moved when I heard the old clock above the fireplace strike 3. That sharp, echoing ding cut through the silence like a knife. And I whispered to myself, all right, on your feet, old girl. I pulled myself up using the edge of the sofa, trying to ignore the way my legs trembled like thin branches in the wind. But as soon as I stood, something caught my eye. My phone. The one I had dropped. It was still recording. My stomach twisted because the phone wasn't just recording. It was facing the basement door. And the door was open again. Not wide, just a sliver. A dark, hungry line of shadow slicing the hallway in half. I bent down slowly, picked up the phone, and without even meaning to, whispered, what do you want from me? And right then the phone buzzed in my hand. A notification. From a number I didn't know. One single text message. I'm coming. My breath stopped. Just stopped. For a second I didn't even feel alive anymore. I stared at the screen waiting for more messages, for some name or clue or anything. But nothing came. You tell me, sweetheart, wouldn't you be terrified if something in your house, something you couldn't see, something that slammed doors and turned photos upside down, suddenly found a way to text you? I swallowed my fear, locked the door, and backed away like I was standing in front of a wild animal. Every instinct screamed, leave the house right now, but another voice inside me whispered, not yet. Not until you know the truth. And maybe this is foolish of me, but sometimes the truth matters more than safety. Sometimes the truth is the only thing that keeps you going. I took a deep breath and walked into the dining room. I needed to think. I needed a moment where the house couldn't creep behind me. But when I turned on the light, I froze again. Something was written on the window. Not scratched, not carved. Written. In small trembling letters, fogged into the glass from the inside. Don't look at him. I pressed my hand against my mouth because it felt like the room tilted. Him. Who was him? The little girl warned me to run. The window warned me not to look at him. Who was this him hiding in my home like a shadow with a heartbeat? I stepped closer to the window, slowly tracing the letters with my fingertip. And I noticed something that made my blood freeze. There were tiny fingerprints under the message. Child-sized fingerprints. Pressed into the fog. She was here. She had been standing right where I was standing, trying to warn me. I whispered softly, honey, who hurt you? And then behind me floorboards creaked. Not soft, hesitant creaks like a child. Heavy creaks. Weighted creaks. Like someone tall. Broad. Slowly shifting their weight from one foot to the other. I didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around. My chest tightened like an invisible rope was pulling it inward. I stared at the glass, trying to breathe, trying not to faint. And then very slowly a question formed in my mind. If you were standing there with me, sweetheart, if you felt that heavy presence behind you, would you turn around? Or would you run? As I stayed perfectly still. So still I wasn't even sure I was breathing. And then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. And on the third flicker, I saw it in the reflection of the glass. Someone standing behind me. Tall. Dark. A shape with no face. No features. Just a height. Like a shadow pretending to be human. I didn't blink. I didn't scream. I didn't even move an inch. I just stared at the reflection, my heart pounding like it wanted to escape my chest. The air turned ice cold, so cold it burned my lungs. And the figure moved. Closer. Slowly. As if sliding instead of walking. I whispered, trembling. Please, please don't hurt me. And the shadow stopped right behind my shoulder. My breath fogged the glass. The shadows didn't. Then slowly, very slowly, something else appeared in the reflection. The little girl. Standing in the doorway. Her eyes wide. Her finger pressed to her lips. Telling me to stay quiet. Her lips formed a silent plea. Don't look. I closed my eyes. Tight. Every muscle in my body screaming with fear. The shadow behind me leaned closer. I could feel the cold pouring off it like frost. My bones felt frozen. My skin prickled like pins were pressing from the inside out. And then a sound. Not from the shadow. From the little girl. Her voice soft and terrified. Run now. My eyes snapped open. The shadow and the reflection twitched, like it sensed movement. And without thinking, not a single thought, I bolted. My legs carried me faster than they had in years, maybe decades. I ran down the hallway, nearly slipping, grabbing the wall, gasping for breath as my heart slammed against my ribs. Behind me I heard footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Fast. Following me. Chasing me. I ran toward the front door. But right when I reached out to grab the handle, it unlocked by itself. Then swung open. As if someone on the other side wanted me out. Wanted me safe. I stumbled out onto the porch, nearly falling to my knees. I grabbed the railing, looking back, expecting to see the shadow looming in the doorway. But the door slammed shut. Hard. Shaking the whole frame. And then silence. Cold, eerie, terrible silence. I backed away from the house, shaking, breathless, trying to make sense of what had just happened. And sweetheart, I swear on my life, as I stood there in the yard trying not to collapse, Someone whispered my name from the window upstairs. Soft. Dragging. Not the little girl. Someone older. Deeper. Someone who had been waiting for me. I stood out there in the cold night air, my breath shaky, my hands trembling like I had electricity trapped under my skin. The house looked different now, like it was alive. Like it was watching me the same way a predator watches something small and aging and easy to swallow. And then I heard it. That whisper of my name floating from the upstairs window. Margaret. Not a child's voice. Not the girl. This voice was deeper. Older. Like it had been rotting for far too long. I stepped backward, shaking my head, whispering, "No, no." Because, sweetheart, when something calls you by your name from inside a house you just ran out of, that thing knows you. Maybe better than you know yourself. I should have kept running. Should have gone to the neighbors. Should have called the police or a priest or anyone who still had both feet planted firmly in reality. But something inside me, something stubborn and terrified and fiercely curious, kept whispering, "You can't walk away without knowing the truth." And the truth, darling, the truth was what scared me most. I took one steadying breath and looked up at the window. A silhouette moved behind the curtains. Tall. Lean. A shape that bent wrong at the edges, like a shadow trying too hard to pretend it was human. Then the curtain shifted, and for one brief, horrible second I saw eyes. Not glowing. Not demonic. Just empty. Empty like a well with no bottom. And that was when I finally understood, this thing wasn't here because of the girl. The girl was here because of it. I whispered, "What do you want?" And the whisper from the window came again, dragged out like it was chewing on my name. "Come back." I shook my head so hard my vision blurred. "I am not stepping foot in there again," I said, my voice trembling with fear and fury. "Not unless you tell me what you are." The wind shifted. The porch creaked behind me. And then from the corner of the yard she appeared. The little girl. Standing under the lamppost. Hair damp and tangled. Eyes wide and glassy like she had cried for centuries. She lifted her hand and pointed at me. Then pointed at the house slowly, purposefully. "Don't go back inside," she whispered, barely audible. I moved toward her, tears pulling at my throat. "Honey, who are you? Please, tell me what's happening." Her lip trembled. She opened her mouth, and for the first time words poured out of her like a broken dam. "He trapped me." My heart sank into my stomach. "Who?" "That thing." She nodded. "He lives in the walls, in the mirrors. In the dark places you don't look at." The wind rushed through the trees and I felt my skin crawl. "He wants you," she whispered. "Because you can see him. Because you're not afraid of the truth." "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered, voice cracking. "I am terrified. Terrified." She shook her head. "No, you stayed. You listened. That's why he wants you." The house groaned behind us, a long deep sound like wood straining under something heavy. The little girl flinched and grabbed my wrist with her cold, fragile fingers. "You have to finish it," she said, "or he'll keep coming." I squeezed her hand. "Finish what, darling?" She pointed at the ground right where she stood. And suddenly I noticed something I hadn't seen in the dark. A small half-buried wooden box poking out of the soil. My breath hitched as I knelt down, brushing away the dirt with trembling hands. Inside was a faded photograph of her, standing next to a man whose face had been scratched out completely, violently, like someone hated him with their whole soul. There was something else too. A thin, brittle page torn from a journal. I lifted it up and read the shaking words. "He watches me through the walls. Mama doesn't believe me. I can hear him whisper my name even when I cover my ears. He said he wants me to stay forever. I think he's already inside this house. I think he will never leave." My heart cracked. "Baby, is this why you're trapped?" She nodded once, slowly. "He took my life. And he wants yours." The house groaned again, louder this time. The porch light flickered violently. A cold, thick shadow spilled across the lawn like ink. The little girl gasped, eyes wide with horror. "He's coming," she whispered. "You have to tell. You have to let them know he's real. People see he loses power. He can't hide." And suddenly everything made sense. The photos flipped. The messages. The warnings. The shadow. He didn't want to be seen. He didn't want to be revealed. He wanted the world to think I was crazy. Alone. Losing my mind. Because darkness is strongest when nobody believes it exists. I looked at the girl, tears burning down my cheeks. Honey, will showing the truth free you? She nodded. And it will save you. So I lifted the wooden box, pressed it to my chest, and stepped forward toward the porch. But the shadow surged across the yard, taller now, angry, stretching into a shape that wanted to swallow me whole. The girl screamed, "Run!" But I didn't. I planted my feet and shouted with every ounce of breath left in my aging lungs. "You are real. I see you. And they will too." The shadow shrieked, an inhuman, piercing wail that rattled the windows. The house lights exploded in a burst of sparks. The ground vibrated beneath my feet. And then just like that, silence. When I opened my eyes, the shadow was gone. The little girl stood in front of me, smiling softly, finally at peace. Her form shimmered like dust caught in sunlight. "Thank you," she whispered. "He can't hurt you anymore. They'll believe you now." And then she vanished. Her tiny fingerprints faded from my wrist. Her soft glow dissolved into the night air. I stood alone, but for the first time in months, the darkness inside my home felt empty. Not haunted, not hungry, just a house again. I took a long breath, wiped my tears, and whispered, "Rest now, sweetheart." And that was the night I stopped being afraid of the truth. Because they thought I was losing my mind, until they saw what I saw. And once you see the truth, darling, you can never unsee it. Before you leave, sweetheart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because I've got many more stories to tell you, and trust me, the next one will keep you awake tonight.